use my new piece of police equipment, reading glasses, or it's important logically. So some awards will have officers, some will have citizens, some will have citizens and officers. Hopefully, we've got the name spelled right, everything done for our certificate. We're all human. And for the citizens, you also get a free complimentary mug as well. So I want you to remember this day when you have that morning cup of brew, or tea, or whatever you prefer. So we'll go ahead and get started. My media folks, are you good? Okay. So I would like to see, and I don't know if everybody is here or not. Didn't I have a color sheet, Cass? Did Brittany Lane show up? Okay. I won't worry about Brittany Lane just now. I will let you know something. There are probably a couple, three, that are very much like Brittany's today. So many times in 2021, it's very difficult for people to do something, to reach out and help somebody. You will see that covered throughout this. And that's exactly what Brittany did on the day that she helped someone who had wandered away from an assisted living facility, one of our more seasoned citizens who was trying to dial the calculator in the gas station where she worked. And she simply picked up the phone and called. She actually did something, and that's one of my mantras, I guess. When people do something, when people act, when people help, just being active and making a call when nobody else will. I know that Kerner and Quinley are in the back. This is how many do I got here? I'm not sure this is stacked on the right one, Cassie?
Yeah, Kerner, Quinley. I don't know if the CPD officers arrived. My guess is those, you see the two.
Got it. All right, well, Kerner and Quinley. Matt, Quinley, could you guys come forward, please? And Shep. Now, Cervantes, nobody will know. We'll clap individually each time. Carpenter from CPD, Monahan, and Schroeder from ULSPD. Those are some of the officers that were involved in this. Back in 2019, the members of the Champaign County Street Crimes Task Force were contacted by what I like to call the Chicago PD, the CPD. Is anyone from Champaign here? No? Okay. Well, the Chicago PD, the CPD, in regards to a homicide suspect that was linked to the Champaign-Urbana area. I'm going to read this sentence from the nomination form. The suspect had killed a mother shielding her baby during a drive-by shooting. So, this is a very serious situation. Jim Kerner here had a pending investigation on one of the suspects. He had obtained a search warrant for this in Urbana, and these suspects ultimately arrived at the residence in Urbana, and these two gentlemen, along with others from the Street Crimes Task Force, were very instrumental in making sure that they could capture the suspect. And truthfully, what I find interesting is they were able to facilitate this with a giant team of guys and gals from this unit. So, gentlemen, I just want to say quickly thank you and present you with your commendation bars. Here it is. Now you can clap, Mike. So let's see here. We got, and just so you know, for the citizens here, a lot of these officers, some of them were already working a shooting just earlier today. So they're going to step out of the world of working a shooting and hopefully come over here for a few minutes and then go back into that world of working shooting. It's the 102nd shooting in Urbana, Illinois this year. Sergeant Coker, Officer Ruff, Officer Ingram, Officer Robinson, Matthew Lindsay, Christy Flygater, and Robert Harmon. any of those people are here, come on up to the front, please. If you don't mind, I'll just let you stand over here. You too, absolutely. Come on over here. So what I have in my hand is a robbery report. Burger King. Here's the summary that the officer wrote on the face sheet. Arrestee entered the business and attempted to purchase food. When the employee opened the register, arrestee attempted to remove currency from the register. Employees and a patron in the store held the arrestee in place until police arrived. So I don't know all of you guys which consider you are Robert. Okay, so you actually were a citizen just there having breakfast that morning.
With my family.
And what did you hear?
I heard a bunch of commotion, called the police and stuff, so I got up to help.
Okay.
I know what was going on.
And you're,
I'm Winley, and I was the guy that took the guy down.
so you, okay, so yeah, I read that. It's very well, it's fun to actually meet the people. You read it, it's very generic and vanilla when the officers write some of these things over and over and over again. But I'd like to thank citizens like you guys who actually were in there and instrumental in doing this. And I think Sergeant Coker, you were running the team that day, that helped out to actually make that arrest. So I will now try to find my certificates, and I appreciate you guys so much for doing this. So let's see, Matthew Lindsay is on top here. Sir, thank you, congratulations. That's good. You can go. Thank you, sir, I appreciate it. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Matt and Robert, go ahead and grab a cup if you want one. Don't feel like you have to take it.
Officer Bennett. Right here. Detective McCartney. I think he was around back there somewhere. Investigator Quinley and Investigator Kerner. I had to pause for a second because we had people getting like multiples of things now. So I just wanted to make sure I got this right. Which you get so much blame, I guess, there, boys. Part of what these guys do, and Paige, part of what these officers do, can be rather difficult at times. This event is a call that took place at a hotel where a father overdosed and died using heroin. In the room was the mother and a 2-year-old. And the officers came out. They ultimately, with the help of Paige Bennett, were able to care for the toddler, initiate the investigation, and then go and find the right guys, the detectives and the Street Crimes Task Force people to help continue the investigation. Officer Bennett with Detective McCartney, Investigator Quinley, and Investigator Kerner were able to confirm and ID the offenders who were selling the heroin. As a matter of fact, Champaign had a very similar incident involving a death just a day or two after the Urbana incident. Ultimately, these gentlemen were able to work the case, make an arrest, and the offender pled guilty to 6 years in prison. So while it is a very sad event, I want to recognize these guys for the work that they had done in trying to help, I guess, bring some sort of resolution to this event. So let me give them their you get Sergeant Hurley, Officer Wright, Officer Gale, and Officer Wright again from U of I PD. Or Sergeant Wright, I should say. I guess if you don't notice, it's his document was drafted here. One of the things that we train for, you guys hear a lot about, is that you hear about active shooters. You hear about events where people have had somebody enters a gun and goes and does this in a school or does this in a place of business. This event occurred at Quinley here in Urbana. There were no shots fired. I saw a couple of heads tilt, wondering why they hadn't heard of this. Fortunately, there were no shots fired. However, the dispatch and the report went like this. METCAD, that's our 911 center, advises a male was walking into the building with a gun. There's an armed subject in the nursing home. Now, I love my brothers, my firefighter friends. I'll make some more fun of them later at the end. But they don't call the firefighters when this kind of things happen. They call these guys. And U of I came over to help us. And ultimately, they worked their way through the building. They worked their way, and staff is pointing and directing the officers as they go down through the building. And ultimately, they confront the offender. And they do it so effectively that he immediately surrenders. He was arrested, but it's almost comical when they write, he was arrested without incident and was found in possession of a .38 caliber revolver. But due to their quick thinking and their work, at that point, that day indeed, there was no incident. They were able to actually calmly, coolly address the problem. We actually use this particular event. We've discussed it in some of our training. So many times officers will end up, you watch a video that occurred in Philadelphia, or we hear about an event that Chicago Police did. They actually have one of these in your own town, and they have put together the principles and things that we've trained on. It was nice to see it actually come to fruition, and nobody got hurt. So now I have to figure out who gets which award here. Let's see, from Mike. And a commendation for Detective Spray, or Wright, or Hale, or McClellan, or Wilfong.
I think you got it.
Right, I got Wilfong here. I thought I got Hale just here. There you go, come back up.
That's for Dad when he wins.
Those who know Ken Sprague, he's a very active officer. And indeed, while responding to one event, he sees something else occurring and is able to get, I guess, both things under control. And while he approaches a car where he smells a tremendous odor of cannabis, two guys get out, take off, and then begin to really take off and break into a run. Ultimately, Officer Sprague, along with Hale, Wilfong, and others that I listed here, were all involved in apprehending at least one of the young men. I will just say that the vehicle had over 100 grams of weed, a gun with an extended magazine, and $15,000 worth of cash. I think that one of the things that was neat about this particular case is the way that they coordinated their efforts and doing what police do. Which is, even though they may have been dispatched to one thing, always being observant, seeing something else that didn't seem quite right, and then addressing it. So I would like to thank these guys and present them with their certificates, and I'll slide behind you both. Peter? So. be standing in the back, or John Brown, or Officer Williams from U of I, or helping, please come forward. Being a university town does present certain challenges. In this particular event, there was a suicidal subject, and I actually read through this, and then I read through it again. Suffice it to say that there was a young person who was in crisis, and the police were sent to help. The suicidal subject called. Metcalf advised that the subject was planning on jumping out of a window. Well, they didn't exactly know where that was, so they began with the dispatchers to ping the phone, and officers were nearby looking on rooftops. Officers are on one floor, and Officer Dedecker was on the third floor of 901 Western when a second reporting person said, "No, this person's trying to break out a 10th floor window of Hendrick House." So now the officers were dispatched. Some officers then ran from one address over to the 6th floor, up this tower, over, back down, up to the 10th floor of the west tower, etc. Here's what's actually, I think, is the best part. Officer Dedecker, Officer Jeffers, Officer Berry then reached the 10th floor at roughly the same time. The victim was restrained without incident and injury and transported to Carl for treatment. The victim was only 16 years old. So because of the action and the quick thinking of these officers, that 16-year-old, let's see another day. So thank you, all of you, who made me laugh. So now I'm gonna have to sort through my stuff. Can you hear me, right? Sure. There. 20 slices there? You can share with everybody exactly.
He went up 10 on one side, and then when he got towards the top of the 10th on the other side, we realized it was the 10 on the other side. They're not connected, so he went back down and back up to the other side. So he ran about 20 flights of stairs.
Right front. Yeah, well, you just pull your vest up.
Okay, now, thanks, Mike.
Just turtle head. Wrap your finger around.
Okay, some of you guys just keep coming right back up. Officer Jeffers, Officer Marquez, Officer Rich, Sergeant Wilfone, Sergeant Cervantes, and there's one Officer Crane from U of I PD still hanging around here. So the Boost Mobile store at 500 North Cunningham is robbed. These officers and a couple others who are not here today respond, set up a perimeter, begin to do the things that police do. They get out on foot. They actually locate a subject at nearby trailer park. Inside the laundry room, they find a subject. The clothing description, though, was different. So they release him, they continue on their way. And then try to see if you can follow this. Officer Jeffers then noticed bikes in the driveway of one unit that were not normally there. He made contact with them, and the folks inside denied knowing anything about the bikes. They then located at that same area the clothing that the robber had shed. And so they went back out to the other officers. They found their initial subject, conducted some more investigations, actually got a consent to search, And lo and behold, they found his shoes and a giant pile of United States currency on that subject, and they made an arrest. Later they compared that with some surveillance video, and indeed, they were able to solve this particular robbery. What I liked was written here, on the nomination form. What was worth note, and in my opinion worthy of award, was the fact that not only did they get out and walk to the trailer park, but their observations, communication, and willingness to ask for consent and do some general solid police work led to a successful outcome. So, present you guys your certificates here. Officer Bennett. I guess I had to take a moment to go back and see if I could find the other one that she wasn't here for. I got it. I got it all. Not everything that we do, unfortunately, ends well, but I thought this one was worthy of note. An MTV bus picks up an elderly lady, and she has a health event, most likely a cardiac event, riding and slumps over and falls down. The MTV doesn't know what to do, so they pull over and they call for help, and then they call their dispatch, who calls 911 dispatch. Because the firefighters are in their station house, police usually are out and about. So Paige was one of the first ones there. And it says, not much else to say other than Paige didn't hesitate to act once she got there. She immediately began performing CPR. While the elderly woman passed away, we still want to recognize the good work and the ability to just jump right in. And for that, I thank you. So I'm going to present you with a certificate of merit. And since she wasn't here earlier, she also was the officer that was intimately involved in the overdose, and there was the 2-year-old and the street crimes unit and that whole event. She actually gets a commendation ribbon for that, so I just want to give it to you. Jeff Cassidy. So, Joe, glad you're here today. I got a couple other things I have to make sure to get to you, but this is the first one. And this one is when you read the report, which I'll read a couple of lines, you understand sometimes, like I said, how these officers just continue to do their job, and they don't necessarily, it sometimes can be a day at the office. This is a life-saving award. And a female calls 911 and is screaming into the phone. The dispatcher can later hear some gagging noise on the open line. And Officer Cassidy arrived, located a young juvenile female unresponsive on the ground, and began to assist. There was also a language barrier. So we have all of this mayhem, all of this commotion. And now you have to do this, and we're not even speaking the same language. Joe was able to perform the Heimlich maneuver and assist providing first aid to the little girl who was 5 years old. And while there, she begins to cry. And although as a parent sometimes crying can test your patience, this was absolutely positive to here. Upon my arrival, I parked in the south parking lot, and I could hear screaming. I entered the building and followed the sounds of screaming and saw the female laying on the ground just outside of the door. But as I was able to hear gurgling sound coming from the girl. And as soon as she began crying, I kept a hold of her and was able to talk to the mother and provide her put her in a recovery position. Kind of technical, but he saved this young lady's life. And for your quick thinking and your action, I would like to present you with the Urbana Police Department's Life Saving Award. Yeah, so now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna keep this for later. Sorry, Joe, we'll get it back to you. Erin Kristovich, I know I saw her in the back somewhere. Erin would volunteer for time and work at the stations. I think you do this for Champaign as well. And so one of the supervisors in our services area was amazed how much work Erin would do. And was described as energetic. Some of our awards, we have a very particular acute event like the life-saving, and some it's just recognizing general good work. When Erin approached Urbana Police about volunteering, she was already volunteering for Champaign Police, as well as at an equestrian therapy center, following their 4 days a week. She insisted that she still had the time and energy to help. And the supervisor here noticed this and wanted to recommend her for award, and I agreed. And thank you so much. Here. It's too bad because this is one of my favorite stories of the day. We had a traffic stop. Subject was wanted on warrants, ran off. Officers are swarming and going all over. Can't seem to find the person who's run. But this subject was listening on his scanner. Realized he was kind of close to the action. Noticed somebody outside and saw some grasses and bushes moving. Dials 911, lets the police know what's happening, and the officers are able to swoop in and make the arrest. So again, citizens seeing something and doing something. Pastor Marsh Jones, are you here? As the mayor and I speak about quite often, we spend a lot of time and energy in public safety helping those that are in a mental health crisis. And this is no different here with Pastor Jones. There's a subject standing in the middle of the road. And just so that we know, it's at, let's see, 1800 block of Cunningham at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So there's all kinds of traffic, all sorts of activity. The officers arrived and they're having some issues trying to get the subject out of the roadway, but the subject asks, they were having delusions, and it should be, here it is. Pastor Jones was contacted and asked if he would come to the scene while the other officers blocked off the street. That's an example of community policing. And that's an example of somebody caring enough to say, yes, I will get up, and I will go, and I will reach out, and I will help. As a matter of fact, if I remember this right, then later in the report, you actually gave the subject a ride to the hospital. So, for your efforts and your willingness to participate, I'd just like to say thank you and present you this certificate. Thank you. Brandon Carter here today.
First one here, for the record.
For the record. Didn't beat you here, Rich. Almost. Come on over. As I talked about a little bit ago, we had an event where a young lady was going to be recognized for helping with an older person, a 70-year-old person with dementia. Very, very similar event here. According to this actual synopsis, the officers were dispatched to a medical or a missing persons call. Somebody had wandered away from the facility. And we actually were able to put out, I'm not a big social media person. Okay, I don't do any social media. But we put it out on social media. There had been some press work done. And was instrumental in seeing what had happened and picking up the phone and making the call so that we could come out and reunite this citizen and get them back to the medical facility and unite them with their family as well. And so for that, Mr. Carter, I'd like to say thank you for presenting this certificate. Thank you so much. Just kind of come here, Carter. Okay, let's see, Officer Vogt, Officer Henry, Officer Yeagle, Sergeant Alfonso, and Sergeant Hurley. Please come down. Please hide on this one. Another event involving mental health issues. And one of the things that I like to say is that sometimes it seems very easy to say, well, this is a mental health thing. But a lot of calls don't present as a mental health event. This actual event actually came in as a domestic disturbance. And it was only after the officers had sorted through this and realized indeed it was more than just a domestic service dispute. There was actually this mental health component to this. One of the things that I liked about this is one of the officers was able to, so that they realized that this person is in crisis. As a matter of fact, there had been fluid and cleaning fluid and shampoo or something spilled all over the floor. We needed to try and figure out how to safely take this person into custody. And so, indeed, they used a blanket, and they ultimately made a plan. And when they went to go hands-on, ultimately, here's what it says: the victim complied and only offered verbal resistance. And we can take verbal resistance, but because of their work, because of their patience, because they were able to at time be their friend on this event, they were able to take this person into custody without incident. And this was the line that I liked. Her mother, so the person in crisis, her mother was there. Her mother praised the police response and thanked us for getting her daughter out. So, team, thank you. Now I gotta figure out all these Officer Rowe. Officer D-Deck, I know that we've had, I think there was a law enforcement official with a month, should be honored for a while back. But this is his official awarding of his actual physical award. And I'll just read this from Officer D-Decker's report. Let's see. I was dispatched at 2406, blah, 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 to assist Urbana Fire Department with a baby that was just born and not breathing. When I arrived on scene, I located the mother in the bathroom tub with her newborn baby son. The son was not breathing. So while the mother continued to hold him, I began CPR until medical personnel arrived on scene. And then as I went in and this blah, 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 blah. It just immediately goes back into this is what we do. And I don't want us to always take it, I think we need to stop sometimes and recognize some of the very, very cool work that these men and women do here. So, yeah, I had actually gotten reached out by the family of these folks later who wanted to thank me for your work. So again, I'm going to present you with this actual award. So thank you.
I guess to keep it. Let's either good work.
Let's see. I am Jennifer Mitchell. Nicole Dowling and James Dowling. And or Anita Merritt. I'll just very briefly mention this one because I thought again this one was special. We've dealt with our seasoned citizens who walked away. Well, this is a 3-year-old found in the middle of the road out on Route 130. And instead of driving by hoping somebody will do something, these people jumped out and did something about it. And I think that's this could have had a very terrible outcome, but not because of the work. Just taking a few minutes to step maybe out of their comfort zone and do something. And I think it's noteworthy. Really put the numbers on there for me. That doesn't help. I know what the hell we're doing. All right, so I don't think, does Sprague show up? Is he here? No? Okay, Yeagle, I think is here. And Bradley McCormick. Yes, so she decided to help me with the actually. She useless to me, right? Either 475 or nothing, no clue, right? Okay. The Alliance Against Intoxicated Motorists gives out awards every year. We nominated, I think our top 3 officers with regards to DUIs get nominated. So, Jonathan Yeagle for 7 DUIs. I don't know, did you do that many?
Could do 4 of them.
And McCormick, I think you had, yeah, indeed, 11. So, yes. Thanks, guys. Matt Quinley. So many papers. So, Matt Quinley was recognized as Officer of the Year in 2019. And so he and I got to go to a little luncheon together and whatnot, but today I wanted to officially recognize him in front of all of you. Matt came from the McLean County Sheriff's Office 20 plus years ago and has been an absolute stalwart in working on what ultimately became his, I guess, finding his niche, which is indeed working in the world of the Street Crimes Task Force, working on, very surgically, on gun cases and drug cases. As a matter of fact, in 2003, that's what it was, we were Matt and I were one of the founding members of Urbana Street Crimes Unit way back when. Matt's always calm. He's always cool and collected. I don't see Matt get worked up. And those that sort of ability, that attitude has helped serve him in this capacity. It's served him as he worked in general investigations. And it's given him the ability to work with young people. When I mean that, I'm talking about new officers and help to teach and help to guide. As a matter of fact, in 2019, he was responsible for initiating 27 different cases, or excuse me, 27 different arrests resulting from the cases that he had started regarding drugs and weapons. So, Matt, I thought this was interesting, and again, during the nomination, somebody had written this. Throughout the year, Investigator Quinley was available 24 hours a day to answer questions and provide guidance. He always took personal time to help others to better themselves and their investigation skills. So, Matt, although it's a little bit late, I just want to say thank you for your Brad works at our front desk, and he has been is being awarded the Civilian Employee of the Year for 2020. I thought this was, as everybody knows, COVID's been a problem in all sorts of service delivery areas, and especially at public safety areas. And one of the areas that's really tricky, as the employee pool shrinks, the room for error shrinks. As our patrol officers, we ultimately had a whole day shift team of officers go down to quarantine and other things, and we had to have detectives step in for a few days to actually work the streets and those kinds of things happen. And Rad absolutely was a big piece of our front desk staying up and running throughout all of 2020. The nomination form says he is reliable, flexible, has taken on many duties and training responsibilities. Because of Rad's efforts, there was not a disaster at the front desk. I wanted to also note, as I was thinking about Rad and his work there, always calm as well. Competent, solid as an employee, and he does take on extra work. Sometimes it's not even just here, he uses vacation time to help on the family farm. So I was, the way you have ability to rearrange your schedule, the work that you've done, I'm absolutely taken down. So thanks, man. And I present you with this plaque. Joe Cassidy. Please. I know the officers here know Joe. If you, is a civilian. If you don't know Joe, welcome to say congratulations afterwards, please do. He's a guy worth knowing. He's a guy who has all sorts of technical skills. He's on our SWAT team. He's a field training officer. But you will not find a more engaging personality or somebody with a positive attitude. My sons and I like to talk about when somebody has a joyful spirit, you can tell. Joe has a joyful spirit. Matter of fact, I think some of the words that were used in all the pages of people that nominated you here, dude, talked about kind, thoughtful, caring, hardworking. Joe can dance with kids on Facebook videos, mediate a neighborhood dispute, or again, respond to a man with a gun call. And to be able to have a skill set that you can do all of those things and do them well, it's a nice find to have. I'm gonna read one sentence from one of these, or one paragraph here from one of the nomination forms. The Urbana Police Department is a better place and a better organization because Joe is here. I am thankful for his work and his service. I am proud to be part of an organization that has people like Joe. We are all better for it. Joe, congratulations. And just as a quick closure note, I will present Michelle Carr her Civilian of the Year Award for 2019, and I guess she and I get to go to lunch or something. I am absolutely thrilled that everybody was able to be who did. Again, we can't do our job without citizens helping us, and calling and sort of stepping up and trying to fill the voids, because we can't be everywhere all the time. So having said that, I appreciate your time. We are just under an hour. Please have some individually COVID-safe cookies and bottles of water. And if you didn't get your coffee cup, please grab one. So thank you all for coming.
So what did Ford want to talk to you about? What? Oh, this little thing? So I say, is that a policy violation? I'm like, no, it's private property. You know what I mean? You didn't find anything crazy in there, right?
30 minutes maybe? I was under for longer than I think the 30 minutes. And they're temporary because there was